This one is kind of for the players. I'm going to try and keep it somewhat spoiler-free. However, if I do say a spoiler, I'll try and say that I've done it afterwards so Laura can edit it before. And so I won't spoil anything too bad to anyone. But hey, welcome to the video where today this is going to be for both DMs and players. So that's a new thing in terms of the module videos. We're going to be talking about having player characters from Chult. Now, I've actually done this. One of the player characters in my Tomb of Annihilation game is a native of Chult. They are a Tabaxi native from a tribe that they created themselves in collaboration with me a little bit as well, and they've kind of had this whole thing of, despite them being a native, they haven't traveled too far out of their tribe's borders because they haven't seen too much of a need to, other than for survival purposes. And I think that having a player character from the island of Chult is really cool. They could be a lot of different things. There's plenty of ways that you could incorporate them. They could be an Arakocra from Kursabal on a holy pilgrimage to help everyone or something like that. They could be an old resident of Mesro that survived the spell plague and all the chaos that went on in there. They're like an elf or something that's been living there for 200 plus years and has finally decided to leave or something. You could even have a Grung character from Dungrung Lung if you really wanted, and stuff like that. And there's a lot of cool places that you could perhaps have a player character from. If you're a player, talk to your DM if you want to be from Chult, and they can explain some somewhat easy ways to integrate you into the story in a way. I think the best way to go about it, however, is instead of having you be from a predetermined place, work with your DM in creating a new one. Your DM might not be up to this and might just simply say, you can be from this place for the sake of ease, because modules can sometimes be, the main reason someone would run a module is not only for the cool story that it presents, but the fact that you don't have to prep as much as you would for like a homebrew game. So your DM might not be up for that, but if they definitely are, you two can have a proper sit down and work through some elements of where you're from. I'll be giving examples for this. So the player character that's in my game that's from Chult is called Solstice. She's a Tabaxi rogue bard mix-up that's from a tribe known as the Moontrees tribe, which basically a Tabaxi group that tell stories in song to each other around the fire and stuff like that. And they're also mainly focused on their own personal survival, but definitely have an element of it's slightly Wakandan in a way, except not technologically advanced. That's the one thing that's kind of like a not match to that, if you will. My player got really into it, and they'd found a small trinket that I'd placed in Mesro while they were exploring it, and it was like a story of her old tribe and like a hero, if you will, that she's kind of following the story of. And since then, after finding that book, she's like learned this story, and the players really gone with it. They got like a wood-bound book, and they've kind of cultivated their own language out of a mix of Wakandan and various other African dialects and stuff, and they can read it, and it's very cool. They haven't needed to though, because their memory is amazing. You don't need to go that far at all. That's just something that the veteran player has decided they'd like to do because they feel great passion about a character that they've been playing 20 plus sessions with. And I don't blame them. I'd do the exact same for other characters if I had any level of talent in anything like that. Nevertheless, definitely coming up with a location is good. After that example, maybe consider some of the factors that I explained. So, how advanced is this group? Are they purely primitive? Are they a small group of goblins or something that are just making little tools and chopping down trees and stuff like that? Or are they a band of well-settled explorers? Are they a small guild from perhaps Waterdeep that's moved over to Chult and created a small base in the jungle to begin like an exploring thing? You could be like an emissary or explorers from Waterdeep that have been in Chult for a few years and kind of know some levels of the area. If your DM was cool with kind of talking about that and revealing some elements of the area. I think that that's one of the things that Tomb of Annihilation lacks. It's finding location to location and getting you from one place to the other than returning back to port every time to find something else to do, if you know what I mean. But That's definitely one thing that you could do in terms of the Moontrees tribe that we came up with. Let's make another one right on the spot, right here. I didn't plan to do this, we're gonna do it anyway, hell yeah. So I'm gonna think of a race that would perhaps make sense for a settlement in the jungle. Let's say lizard folk. So you're a green lizard folk and you think, yeah, it makes sense for me to be from like a more swampy area. So you could talk to your DM about what sort of terrain that would be. So there's some swampy areas in Tomb of Annihilation, so you could definitely be from some of those. And then perhaps consider, were you like a solo hunter, purely for survival? Were you with a small group, perhaps? I think for this sort of lizard folk are practical people. I wouldn't imagine they'd try and survive the jungle on their own if they could help it. So it's more likely they'd be part of a small community that are purely based on survival and like crafting weapons out of other people's bones, which is something that they do that's really cool. And you've kind of been surviving around this swampy area, perhaps fighting off crocodiles and stuff like that. And perhaps come up with like a theme of the group other than the obvious, which is we're in a jungle and we're trying to live. So this lizard folk group, for example, could be trophy hunters. They could be collecting like symbols of strength all around them, like you carry around the heads of various small dinosaurs that you've slain at the start of the game to boast to others about your expertise in your area, and also as kind of like a defensive mechanism so that other creatures will fear you and choose to not fight you. So lizard folk are kind of practical like that. And once you have this small group built, you could maybe come up with a name, you could even come up with a symbol if you really wanted, but they're the core things that I think you could do and work out with your DM, so you could probably get those sorted. And finally with this, let's think about how that plays into what class or background you'd take. So with this lizard folk, I definitely think the Outlander background would fit, which is quite good for Tomb of Annihilation. And then you could also consider what sort of class would be incorporated into that. I think a multitude would work there. You could go with a lot of different things. There's Druid and Ranger, those two quite in tune with nature, probably quite good at navigating and survival. You could also mix it up a little bit more with something like perhaps you're a fighter, purely warrior, like a rogue, scout or something that's kind of like you excel in finding enemy weak points, stabbing into them and avoiding combat altogether, and stuff like that. And I think they're the main four that would probably make the most sense. However, you can go wild with it. Maybe this group of lizard folk is faithful to a dragon that they once served that got killed, and they're like really upset about it, and they're harnessing their belief in this dragon to cause chaos and destruction against their foes and stuff like that. You could be a Wardomain cleric and excel in weaponry. You could also be a barbarian, very spiritually honed and very rage-based. You could be probably what would make the most sense for that would be a totem warrior, because of they're probably the most tribal when barbarian comes to mind. In terms of their, like, so they have an animal spirit totem that kind of assists them and stuff like that. And we've made a PC that could be from Chult. I think that in the next video I'll probably actually go more into this for a Port Nyanzaru character, which is kind of like the main city settlement on Chult. So if you guys want that, make sure to let me know in the comments or join the Discord and tell me there and go like, hey Jake, you bastard, make a freaking video on Port Nyanzaru, because I might forget that. But yeah, like the video if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to see more of this. And check that Discord that I told you about in the description as well. Thanks, see ya.